And we're joined on the phone today by author Mark Altman, and we're talking about his new book, Nobody Does It Better, The Complete Uncensored, Unauthorized Oral History of James Bond. Mark, how you doing today?
Great. Looking forward to talking Bond with you.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about the new book here, Nobody Does It Better, The Complete Uncensored, Unauthorized Oral History of James Bond. Obviously, it's all about Bond, but can you tell the listeners a bit about the book?
Yeah, well, it's a book overlooking the entire 50-year-plus saga of James Bond in movies, a little bit about the books that preceded it, and we dive a little into Spy Mania, which is Bond, movies like the original Casino Royale and the Flint films with James Coburn, and, basically Spy Mania was a huge thing in the wake of the Bond films. Matt Helm was a popular character as well. So it's a deep dive in oral history where we talk to virtually everyone involved with the Bond movies over the course of the 50-plus years, and hopefully, unearth a lot of chestnuts that people haven't heard about the Bond movies.
Yeah, this is incredible. When I first got the book, I wasn't expecting it to be quite as big as it is. I mean, you've obviously got a lot of stuff in here.
Well, people say, how can I get the body of Daniel Craig? All you got to do is buy this book and use it for exercising, for arm lifts, and you'll have muscles in no time. It's a pretty hefty tome.
Well, you mentioned, Mark, talking to 150-some people involved in the films over the years. How did that go about? Did you have to go and track all these people down? I imagine that must have been quite the process.
Yeah, that's always the biggest challenge with any of these oral histories. It's not only, tracking everyone down, because a lot of people are retired and not working anymore, don't have publicists, don't have agents. So it's finding them, and there are a fair amount of people that had passed away that were sort of key to telling the story. Fortunately, Ed Gross, my collaborator, has been a journalist for a long time, so he had interviews with people that had passed away as well. So it's like archaeology. Sometimes I feel like Indiana Jones, doing these books, because you really are unearthing all this treasure trove of information. And these people who, maybe have fallen off the radar. I mean, you talk to somebody like, just even finding somebody like Yaphet Kotto, who played Kananga in Live and Let Die. I mean, he lives in the Philippines now, and, it's just, trying to track down people. And, I mean, I was lucky enough to talk to Woody Allen about, playing Jimmy Bond in the Casino Royale spoof in '67. And, that was really amazing to be able to get to talk to, Woody about that role.
Awesome. Again, author Mark Altman's with us. We're talking about his new book, Nobody Does It Better, The Complete Uncensored, Unauthorized Oral History of James Bond. And Mark, what is it about this character or just this world that keeps audiences interested for, 50-plus years now?
Well, I think in a lot of ways it kind of is aspirational. There's what they call the Bond lifestyle. I mean, you think about when Bond began back in the 60s, air travel wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now. So you have, all these amazing places around the world, these beautiful places, whether it be Istanbul or, the Bahamas or Jamaica that Bond was traveling to. So, people could sort of, live through Bond. And I think that, there's that old cliche about men wanted to be Bond, women wanted to be with Bond. And I think that's still true to a certain extent.
Well, and of course, there's still a new Bond film coming out here, No Time to Die. I imagine that's going to be a big hit, too, and it'll probably continue on here for maybe another 50 years.
Oh, I think that there's no limit because, one of the things that Bond does is it evolves with the times. And the producers like Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, and before that their father, Albert Broccoli, they always knew when the franchise needed to bob left or go right after it got in a certain direction. So you get something like Moonraker, which is sort of cashing in on the Star Wars craze, where Bond goes to space, and they realize, oh, my God, we've taken this as far as we can. Now let's come back to Earth and do a small espionage story and For Your Eyes Only. So I think it's the same thing with Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig delivered on a certain aspect that, a lot of Bond fans like myself love. But, I think now with him leaving the franchise after No Time to Die in April, they'll probably go in another direction, which will be just as valid, which is, is really smart. So the franchise never gets boring. And when it does, they reinvent it.
Well, and with that being said, it seems, there are some aspects of James Bond, maybe that wouldn't fly in today's climate, if they were made today. Of course, some of the tropes and things maybe didn't age well, but it seems like people kind of give, the Bond films a pass maybe and kind of look past that.
Well, I think the thing with Bond is, you don't have to approve of the Bond character. I think the films have evolved with the times. So, you have Bond being called out as a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, but that's who the character is. And it's like, I don't think the character should ever change, but the world around him needs to change and evolve with the times. and so nobody's holding him up necessarily as a role model and saying, he drinks too much, he treats, as the quote goes, women like disposable pleasures, so no, it's not that he should be a role model, but it's more like, the movies around them can sort of comment on this character, which was so brilliant about Goldeneye when, sort of Dame Judi Dench calls him out on his behavior. But, Bond is Bond, and, Bond shouldn't be, changed to fit with the times, because that's the character Ian Fleming wrote, and I mean, there's always going to be things that are offensive. I find offensive in Goldfinger where Sean Connery says, I won't listen to the Beatles without earmuffs. So there's always going to be stuff that you're going to have a problem with. But obviously there's some when you go back and watch the early Sean Connery movies in the context of today, there's some things that are questionable, but that's the case with a lot of movies in the 60s or even the 50s or the 40s. So we just have to understand the context of the times they were made, but it doesn't make them any less valid. I mean, some of the best James Bond movies of all time are movies like, From Russia with Love and Goldfinger, 62, 63.
On the other side of that, we're hearing rumors that maybe a woman might be cast as James Bond at some point, and, that seems to, kind of get the other side of the fence bent out of shape. So it's interesting for sure. Yeah,
I think, that's sort of tabloid fodder. Barbara Broccoli has said, James Bond is man. He's always going to be a man, because that's the character of Ian Fleming wrote. Now, there's a place for great female characters in the Bond movies, and there's absolutely other movie franchises. You look at, Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde. There's absolutely a place for female secret agents. It's just that James Bond is a very specific type of character, which was written for a very specific type of man who's a very flawed character, and sort of exploring those flaws, and that darkness underneath that lies underneath that drives Bond is part of what makes that character so utterly compelling. And it obviously it seems as though it's not sexism to say that Bond is a male. I think where you have an issue is where people balk on somebody like Idris Elba. They say, James Bond is an African American, which is ridiculous, because obviously any man who is charismatic and is a great actor can play James Bond. But it definitely seems that it's a role sort of suited for a man, because that's what Ian Fleming imagined it would be.
Well, Mark, I wish we had some more time here, but again, the book "Nobody Does It Better" is just out now, and quite the project you tackled here. I know you've done.
Well, I appreciate it. It was a ton of fun to write. I've been a lifelong Bond fan, and I hope that people enjoy the book now that it's out.
Awesome, and whatever's next, I hope we can speak again down the road here.
Great, I really appreciate it, Dustin. You take care.
All right, you too. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
And again, that was author Mark Altman and his new book, "Nobody Does It Better: The Complete, Uncensored, Unauthorized Oral History of James Bond," is available now.